Hi folks, welcome to the channel. Today we are repairing this. This is a rear view mirror off of my second generation Toyota Supra. And the problem with some of these cars, the older cars, is these mirrors are very, very expensive if you can find one. And in the case of my car, you can't get them from Toyota anymore, and finding them online has become harder and harder. And here the end of the mirror has broken off. The mirror itself is in good shape. The mechanical inside is in good shape, but the actual housing here, plastic housing, has been broken. So we have the pieces and we're using this stuff. This is actually epoxy, but it's a plastic bonding epoxy. If you're familiar with epoxies, they're two-part resins, but this actually has a thinner in it that helps it bond to plastic. So normal epoxy, you have a mechanical bond. This you actually have a mechanical and a chemical bond because it's got a thinner in it that will help dissolve a little bit of the plastic and bring some of that plastic into the bond. So we're going to use this and a few other things to strengthen up this mirror and make it work. So let's get started. The first thing you'll have to do is remove the mirror from the car, and every mirror will come off a little bit differently, but most of the cars I've had have worked kind of like this. You have a trim piece on the inside here that you remove, and then there will be a series of screws that you can take off, a wiring harness to unclip, and that will get the mirror free from the car. Then, depending upon how yours broke, you may or may not have to remove the mirror portion itself. And the mirror portion itself attaches with a little pivot point, which is right here. And these two are screws that run in and out, and that's what gives your mirror the adjustability if you do have one of those electronic mirrors. And you do just pry the thing off, and you do have to apply a fair amount of pressure. You want to check for your car, look online and see how your car comes apart to make sure you don't break any tabs. But in the case of this one, you just get a piece of wood. I used a popsicle stick behind it to help pry so I didn't dent anything up, and it pops right out. If you did break the mirror, you can get replacement mirrors online and on eBay that either is this whole piece or just the glass piece itself for a lot of cars. So if you did break the mirror, check around. Now in this case, we are going to clean up. We've already cleaned up the plastic surface here and these two pieces. So we're going to mix up some epoxy and epoxy those pieces back in here. And that's our first step in the repair. So we're going to start by taking the epoxy and squirting out an equal amount of the resin and the hardener. Make sure you use this stuff in a well-ventilated place. If you're used to using epoxy, you know it has an aroma to it. This stuff actually has more of a scent to it because it has that plastic bonding agent in it. So once you get it out there on the cardboard, you want to take something and mix it up. Make sure that whatever surface you're using and whatever tool you're using is something that's disposable. A popsicle stick or a tongue depressor or something like that works great. And also, I do have a link for this epoxy in the description below. Now with that done, we're going to take our pieces and we're going to apply epoxy to the edges that we're going to be gluing together. Now it's okay here to get a little bit on the outside or on the inside, and that's because on the outside we're going to be sanding that area smooth, and on the inside we can sand it smooth, but you also won't see it either. So it's not as necessary to get those areas completely clean of epoxy at this point. So we're going to So there you go. We're going to grab some masking tape real quick and secure that a little bit better. So now in here you can see that the glue has started to set up, and the next part that we're going to do is optional, but we are going to do it to increase the strength over here. And we're going to use something real simple. We're going to use some nails and a Dremel. And what we're going to do is along this crack, we're going to cut some slits along here and along that crack. And then we're going to take these nails, sink them in there, and we're going to have to cut these to length and bend them a little bit, but sink them in there and then put epoxy over them to really give this end of the mirror some rigidity and strength. So you see there we have 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts that we can sink bits of nail into, and it is wide enough to fit the nail in there. We're just going to cut these nails to length and then epoxy them in. We have pieces of steel nail. We did bend them a little bit to get them to conform to the shape of the mirror, And we did do it on the inside, not on the outside, because these are going to be kind of hanging out there, but the mirror is going to be in front of it, so you won't see any of that. So we've got those in there, so now let's go ahead and epoxy those in place.
It is extremely hard to get off skin, so it's always a good idea to glove up if you think you're going to be getting epoxy on yourself.
So now we'll let that epoxy cure in there, and then we'll move on to the next step, which will be sanding and finishing and shaping the mirror. After giving the epoxy 24 hours to set up, you want to take the outside edge, which would be this area here, and a block sander. I'm actually using a foam block sander here to take down all the extra material and smooth out this area. So we're going to smooth it out, smooth out the ridges, and smooth out the epoxy that's come out so we can get a nice smooth finish. So we've now sanded that edge and we've gotten everything smoothed out, and you can run your finger over it and make sure, even though there's discoloration there, you'll be able to feel if there are any raised or low areas that you need to hit with the sander. And as you go over it, you may have to go over it several times. You may find spots that still need additional filler. And if you do find low spots in there and you can't sand down to them, you may have to use a plastic filler like right here. We're going to use a little bit of plastic filler to fill in that spot and get this whole thing nice and smooth. So to fill those little bits, we're going to be using some of this glazing spot putty. I have a link for this stuff in the description below. There's a couple different kinds you can use. You can use single part or two part, and we've got it here. And here's a little tip for you. When you are spreading this stuff on, you don't need a lot of it. You just need enough to fill the voids. So the easiest thing to apply it with is a little piece of plastic. I'm using clear plastic here, but if you've got like an expired gift card or an expired credit card, those work really well as well. And you want to come along any place where you have a low point and skim it on there. You don't need a lot. You just want to go across and get it in any of those low points. And you can actually then go in and kind of clear the excess off. Now with our glazing putty dry, we're going to take that same sanding block as before. We're going to sand this down to smooth. Now this stuff does come off pretty easily, so you don't have to go at it very hard, and you don't want to take off too much material. You just want to get it down to smooth and the correct shape. Now we've got our mirror sanded down. We've wiped the entire thing down with a damp cloth, and you want to make sure you thoroughly wiped it down. You don't want to have any dust on it. And then you can see down there we've masked off the rubber around it that we don't want to get paint on. And the next thing we're going to be using is a plastic primer. You don't want to use a primer for metal because this isn't a metal part. You do want to use a plastic primer. So we're going to spray it with plastic primer. This stuff is actually clear when it goes on, so it's kind of hard to see where you got it, but you will see that it is wet as it goes on. After you put this on, then you can use a high build primer if you feel like you might be having to sand things down. And we may have to do that. We'll see how this comes out. Now with our coat of primer done, we're moving over to our paint. And I'm going to show you a trick here. We are using a Krylon lacquer, and this is a harder paint, so it should hold up a little bit better on the mirrors. But you'll notice we have it in a thing of water here. And we're actually doing that to heat up the paint. It's a little trick here with cans of spray paint. If you heat up the paint inside the can, it'll actually atomize better as it comes out. And then when it gets onto your part, it'll lay down smoother. So you can put it in water. You don't want this water any warmer than about 100 degrees. You don't want to overheat the can. The cans can burst. So when you take the can out of the water, make sure you thoroughly dry the can before you spray, because you don't want to get any water on the part that you're painting. It'll ruin your paint job. So we've got our first coat of paint down. Now we're going to let the paint thoroughly dry and follow the directions on the back of the can. Throw it on one more coat of paint, and then our part should be ready to install back onto our car. So now with your paint finished, you do want to wax it because it is a painted surface. This is my favorite wax, this new finish, but you can use whatever you like. And you can see here now we have a nice glossy finish. All we have left to do is install that mirror back into the rearview mirror and put it back on the car. And with that, our project's done. Our mirror's back on the car. It looks great. Now, the only thing I want to do is I am going to paint the mirror on the other side because this one actually looks better than the other mirror. So we're going to do that, but that finishes up this project. So if you like this, if this helped you out at all, give it a great big thumbs up. Be sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button too, and leave a comment. Let me know if there's any other things that you'd like help with on your car or around the house. Thanks for watching.